$40 million maritime defense system sounds like when it dies. It doesn't scream or beep warnings, it just goes silent. Dead silent. I was sitting in my Ford F-250 outside Coastal Defense Corporation at 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in March, watching through my laptop as NavGuard, 4 years of my life's work, went completely dark in front of a room full of Coast Guard admirals. Every single tracking signal from Norfolk to San Diego just vanished. The best part? Bobby Castellano had no idea I was watching from the parking lot or that I'd triggered the whole lockdown from my truck cab 6 blocks away. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to 8:15 a.m. when Bobby fired me for refusing to teach his TikTok-obsessed son how to turn classified maritime defense into social media content. That's when this whole thing started, though honestly, I'd been preparing for this day since I first started building NavGuard's security protocols. My name's Rodney Martinez. 46 years old, married 23 years to Maria, father of 2 grown kids. I spent 18 years in the Coast Guard before getting into civilian maritime systems. Been senior maritime systems engineer at Coastal Defense for 4 years now, and NavGuard wasn't just my job. It was my insurance policy for Maria's medical bills and our future. See, Maria got diagnosed with lupus 3 years back, and the medical bills have been crushing us ever since. Even with insurance, we're looking at $800 a month in medications alone, not counting the specialist visits and lab work. Our savings got wiped out in the first year, and I've been working overtime just to keep us afloat. That's when I set up Martinez Maritime Solutions LLC with Maria as primary stakeholder. Every patent, every core algorithm that made NavGuard work was filed under that LLC, not Coastal Defense. Legal as sunshine and about to become Bobby's worst nightmare. That Tuesday morning, I walked into Bobby's office thinking we were discussing the Coast Guard contract renewal. The meeting was supposed to be about expanding NavGuard's capabilities to cover more ports along the Gulf Coast. Instead, I found Bobby pacing behind his desk like a caged shark, sweating through his expensive suit despite the air conditioning running full blast. "Rod, sit down," he said. "No coffee offer this time," which should have been my first warning. Bobby always offered coffee. "We need to talk about operational modernization. Corporate speak for we're about to mess with something that works perfectly fine." I'd heard that kind of talk in my Coast Guard days when some Pentagon suit wanted to replace experienced petty officers with cheaper contractors. Never ended well. "I've brought in a consultant," Bobby continued, adjusting his tie like it was choking him. "Someone who understands modern marketing, the digital economy, fresh perspectives." That's when he walked in. Blake Castellano, Bobby's 22-year-old son, dressed like he was heading to a beach party instead of a defense contractor's office. Designer sneakers, ripped jeans, and a t-shirt that probably cost more than my work boots. I knew him from his Instagram stories that Maria sometimes showed me, rolling her eyes. 50,000 followers watching him skateboard and talk about disrupting traditional industries while living off daddy's money. "Uncle Rod," Blake announced, pulling out his phone to start recording. "Dad says you're gonna show me the ropes. This is so sick. I'm thinking we could do a whole series about behind-the-scenes defense tech. My followers would eat this up. Authentic military content is huge right now." I looked at Bobby, feeling my jaw tighten. "You want me to train him on NavGuard? Blake has fresh perspectives, Rod. He graduated with a marketing degree from Florida State last year. The board thinks new approaches are exactly what we need to expand our market reach and modernize our communication strategy." New approaches, right? What they needed was someone who understood that NavGuard wasn't some gaming app you could figure out over a weekend. This system tracked every Coast Guard cutter, Navy destroyer, and commercial vessel in a 200-mile radius of major American ports. One mistake could leave our entire eastern seaboard blind to threats from drug runners, human traffickers, or worse. "I'm swamped with the Admiral's security review," I said, keeping my voice level. "The documentation alone is going to take me another week. Maybe someone from the training department could help him get oriented with basic protocols first." Bobby's face went hard, and I saw his father's temper flash in his eyes. Old man Castellano had built this company from nothing, but Bobby inherited it without inheriting the work ethic that came with it. "This isn't a request, Rod. It's a direct order. Blake needs to understand our core systems if he's going to help modernize our marketing approach. The board expects full cooperation from all department heads. I'd been in the service long enough to recognize when someone was giving you an order they knew was wrong. The kind that gets good sailors killed because some officer cared more about politics than protecting his people. I could feel my hands clenching, the way they always did when someone tried to put politics over safety. I can't do that, Bobby. The words hung in the air like fog off the water. 23 years of marriage, 2 kids in college, Maria's medical bills, our mortgage, all of it balanced on those 5 words, can't or won't. His voice dropped to that dangerous quiet that officers use right before they destroy your career. Won't, I said, looking him straight in the eye. NavGuard protects critical infrastructure. Every major port from Maine to Texas depends on this system. It tracks drug runners trying to smuggle fentanyl through Miami, human traffickers using fishing boats off the Carolina coast, and God knows what else. It's not training material for social media experiments. Blake was still recording with his phone, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. This is so authentic, he whispered to his camera. Real workplace drama. My followers are going to love this behind-the-scenes content. Bobby's face was turning red now, the way it did during board meetings when someone questioned his decisions. He reached for his desk phone with shaking fingers. Security, he barked into the intercom. Send 2 officers to my office. Now he hung up and turned back to me, his voice cold as a January northeaster. Rodney Martinez, your refusal to adapt to our evolving business model and comply with direct orders shows you're no longer aligned with company objectives. You're terminated, effective immediately, security escort, 15 minutes to pack my personal stuff, the whole routine. But here's what Bobby didn't know about those patents I'd filed under Martinez Maritime Solutions. When Maria got sick and the medical bills started piling up, I'd done more than just set up an LLC. I'd spent 3 years carefully documenting every line of code, every algorithm, every security protocol that made NavGuard actually work. All of it legally protected under my company, with Maria as primary stakeholder. 2 security guards appeared at Bobby's door within minutes. Rick Torres and Dale Murphy, both good guys who'd served overseas, and knew this whole situation stunk worse than low tide in August. Sorry about this, Rod. Rick muttered as we walked toward the elevator. This whole thing's messed up. In the elevator, I filled them in quietly. Bobby's been in talks with foreign investors for the past month. Wants to license NavGuard technology to whoever writes the biggest check. Doesn't matter if it's legitimate companies or shell corporations fronting for cartels. Dale shook his head. Man, that's not right. This system protects American waters. Exactly. And now they want Blake making TikTok videos about classified defense protocols. Kid doesn't even know the difference between GPS tracking and sonar detection. My office looked exactly the same as it had 2 hours earlier when I'd been a respected senior engineer, instead of an escorted security risk. Pictures of my kids lined my desk. Carlos at his college graduation last year. Sophia at her nursing school pinning ceremony. Maria and me at our 20th anniversary dinner. My old Coast Guard unit photo from my final deployment in the Caribbean, when we spent 6 months intercepting drug runners and human traffickers. 15 minutes to pack up 4 years of my professional life. I grabbed the personal stuff first, the photos, my Coast Guard coffee mug that Carlos had given me for Father's Day, that small American flag Sophia had made me in elementary school. But what I really needed was already in my jacket pocket. A USB drive that looked like any other storage device, but contained something Bobby had never bothered to investigate. That drive held the original patent filings, the licensing agreements, and most importantly, the administrative keys to NavGuard's Level 9 security protocols. My dead man's switch. Don't take any company property, Blake announced from my doorway, still recording everything with his phone. Uncle Bobby said, "You people always try to steal stuff when you get fired. You people?" Like I was some kind of criminal, instead of the guy who'd spent 4 years keeping his comfortable lifestyle safe from the people who wanted to destroy everything he took for granted. "Everything I need is right here," I said, patting my jacket pocket where the USB drive sat next to my truck keys and wallet. The walk to the elevator felt like a funeral march. Rick and Dale flanked me like honor guards, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. As the elevator doors closed, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Kelly Rodriguez, my lead developer. "Storm incoming, batten down the hatches. Watch the 10:30 demo real careful." Kelly texted back immediately. "What did you do, Rod?" "Nothing yet, but Bobby's about to find out what happens when you mess with Coast Guard veterans who actually know how to build things." My F-250 had never felt more like a mobile command center. I fired up my laptop right there in Coastal Defense's parking garage and logged into NavGuard's administrative interface. Not through the company network, but through the back channels I'd built into the system from day one. The screen came to life with a simple message: "Welcome, System Architect. All systems operational. Security Level 9, armed and ready. Level 9. While Bobby and his board had been celebrating each new government contract I delivered, I'd been quietly building something they didn't even know existed. A safety protocol wired directly into NavGuard's core architecture. The logic was elegant in its simplicity. If the primary system architect's employment status changed to terminated without proper security clearance transfer protocols, NavGuard would automatically initiate protective lockdown. No access, no demonstrations, no $40 million contracts until the ownership dispute got resolved through proper legal channels. I checked my watch. 9:47 a.m. Bobby's big Coast Guard demonstration was scheduled for 10:30 a.m. sharp. He'd have a conference room full of admirals watching him show off technology he thought belonged to him, completely unaware that every critical system was about to go dark. Time to teach him the difference between licensing something and owning it. I activated the protocol with a single keystroke. NavGuard began its countdown sequence. 43 minutes and ticking steadily downward. My phone buzzed with a text from Carlos, home from college on spring break. "Dad, saw some weird stuff online about your company trending on defense industry blogs. Everything okay?" I smiled as I typed back, "Everything's better than okay, son. Your old man just reminded some people why they shouldn't mess with guys who actually know how to build things that matter." Haha, awesome. Can't wait to hear the story. Mom's worried though. Should she be? Tell your mom not to worry. We're about to be in a much better position than we've been in years. I drove straight to Tom Wilson's law office downtown. Tom had handled the Martinez Maritime Solutions paperwork 3 years ago when Maria first got sick, and he'd been waiting for this phone call ever since. His secretary showed me into his corner office, where he was already pulling files from his cabinet. "Rod," he said, not even looking surprised to see me. "I heard about your employment status change about an hour ago. News travels fast in this industry. Ready to discuss your options?" Through his floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the Coastal Defense building in the distance. Up on the 12th floor, Bobby was probably making final preparations for his demo, completely unaware that, in exactly 23 minutes, his $40 million contract was going to vanish like morning fog. "More than ready, Tom. How solid are we legally?" He spread the documents across his desk with the satisfied look of a lawyer who'd planned for every contingency. "Rock solid. Every patent filed properly under Martinez Maritime Solutions, LLC. Maria's signature on everything as primary stakeholder. Bobby Castellano has been licensing technology he never actually owned for the past 4 years, and the employment termination makes it even better for us. The licensing agreement specifically states that access continues only as long as the original architect maintains active employment with proper security clearances. They fired you. They voided their own contract." My phone buzzed with a text from Kelly Rodriguez. "Rod, something weird is happening with the system. Getting authentication errors I've never seen before." I smiled and showed Tom the message. "It's starting." At exactly 10:30 a.m., the Coastal Defense Conference Room had been transformed into what looked like a naval command center. I could picture it perfectly. I'd been in that room dozens of times for contract renewals and system updates. 3 massive screens displaying NavGuard's interface in high definition, while the company's remaining engineers stood ready at support stations. The Coast Guard evaluation team sat around the polished mahogany table. Admiral Patricia Hayes, who'd been evaluating defense systems since before Bobby got out of college, Commander Michael Santos from the Port Security Unit, Captain Jennifer Walsh from District 7 Headquarters, 3 regional port directors, enough combined authority to control more maritime firepower than most small countries. Bobby stood at the head of the table, confident as a poker player holding 4 aces. Blake sat beside him with his tablet, probably live streaming the whole thing to his followers with captions like "Dad's crushing this billion-dollar meeting. Defense tech? Nepotism baby." "Ladies and gentlemen," Bobby began in his practiced presentation voice, "what you're about to see isn't just maritime tracking software. It's the future of coastal defense, streamlined for modern threats and optimized for rapid response." He nodded to Dave Patterson, the demonstration engineer they'd hired to replace my recommendation for Kelly's promotion. Dave was a good kid, fresh out of Georgia Tech, but he'd only been with the company for 6 months. He started typing commands, and I could imagine the screens flickering to life with NavGuard's initialization sequence. Everything would look perfect for exactly 12 seconds. Then the first error message appeared: System Architect Authentication Required. Dave would frown, typing faster. Just a minor authentication glitch, sir. Let me reset the connection. Access denied. Employment verification failed. What's the problem? Bobby's voice would carry that edge that officers get when their carefully planned operation starts falling apart in real time. I'm not sure, sir. The system is requesting architect-level credentials that don't seem to exist in our current database. Tom was watching me with amusement as I narrated what was probably happening in real time. You really thought of everything, didn't you? 18 years in the Coast Guard teaches you to prepare for every possible scenario. My phone rang. Glenn Rodriguez calling from the conference room. I'd been expecting this. Rod, this is Glenn. Look, we're having some technical difficulties with the demonstration. The system seems to be asking for your specific authentication codes. System's working fine, Glenn. It's just not working for you. Come on, Rod. We both know this is about more than just your termination. The admirals are getting impatient. Can you walk us through the authentication process? Can't help you, Glenn. I'm no longer employed by Coastal Defense, remember? You'll need to consult your existing licensing agreements. What licensing agreements? I hung up and turned back to Tom. They have no idea what they actually licensed versus what they thought they owned. Back in that conference room, the screens would be flashing red now. A bigger message appearing: security lockdown initiated. Unauthorized personnel detector. Contact system administrator for resolution. The Coast Guard team would be exchanging those looks that senior military officers perfect over decades of dealing with contractors who overpromise and underdeliver. Admiral Hayes leaning forward with the expression of someone who just watched a $1 million missile miss its target by 3 miles. Mr. Castellano, she'd say in that steel trap voice that had probably terrified junior officers for the past 20 years. Is there a problem with your system? No problem at all, Admiral Hayes. Just a routine security protocol that'll be resolved momentarily. Bobby turning to Dave, panic starting to creep into his voice. Fix this, now. Dave's fingers flying across his keyboard, sweat beading on his forehead like he was trying to defuse an actual bomb. Sir, I can't access the core systems. There's something here about security level 9, but I've never seen that protocol before. Level 9. Nobody in that room would know what that meant, which was exactly the point. Get Rod Martinez on the phone. Bobby would bark. Sir, he was terminated this morning per your direct orders. I don't care if he was terminated. Get him on the line. My phone started ringing again. This time I let it go to voicemail, the professional recording I'd set up specifically for this moment. You've reached Rod Martinez. I'm currently unavailable, but if this is regarding NavGuard system architecture, please consult your existing licensing agreements with Martinez Maritime Solutions LLC. For immediate assistance, contact our legal representative Tom Wilson. Thanks for calling. Tom laughed out loud when he heard his name. You really did think of everything. When the system finally completed its lockdown sequence, all 3 screens would go dark simultaneously. Then a single message would appear in bold white letters: NavGuard system in protective mode. All access revoked. For licensing inquiries, contact Martinez Maritime Solutions LLC, authorized representative Maria Martinez. Admiral Hayes would stand up slowly, gathering her materials with the deliberate movements of someone who'd just wasted 3 hours of valuable time. Mr. Castellano, it appears you have significant internal issues that need resolution. We'll need to postpone this demonstration indefinitely. Wait, please, Admiral. This is just a minor technical issue that we can resolve in minutes. Minor? The Admiral's voice could have frozen fire. Your core defense system is completely inaccessible during a $40 million contract evaluation. Your marketing consultant is live streaming our classified discussion to social media. And apparently the only person who can fix this crisis is someone you fired 3 hours ago. She'd head for the door, her team following in crisp military formation. We'll be in touch, maybe in the span of 2 hours. Bobby Castellano would lose everything. The Coast Guard contract dead on arrival. Coastal Defense stock price in freefall as news of the failed demonstration spread through defense industry circles. And NavGuard, the crown jewel technology that justified the company's entire valuation, locked behind digital walls that only I controlled. That afternoon, I found myself in the offices of Atlantic Strategic Partners, sitting across from Catherine Brooks in a conference room overlooking the harbor. Catherine was the kind of woman who'd been making defense deals since before the internet existed and she had the reputation to prove it. Martinez, she said, studying me over her coffee cup, I've had a very interesting day. Admiral Hayes called me personally after the coastal defense demonstration. In 25 years of defense contracting, she said she's never witnessed such a spectacular system failure. Catherine smiled with the sharpness of a combat knife. But here's the thing. We weren't interested in coastal defense. We were interested in NavGuard technology, and our legal team discovered this morning that NavGuard was never really theirs to sell in the first place. She slid a tablet across the polished table. The screen displayed the original Martinez Maritime Solutions LLC incorporation documents with Maria's name prominently listed as primary stakeholder. Our attorneys have been busy since 11 a.m., Catherine continued. Every patent, every core innovation that makes NavGuard valuable, it all traces back to your LLC. Coastal Defense has been licensing technology they never actually owned. They had full usage rights, I said carefully, as long as certain employment conditions were maintained. Conditions that were violated at 8:15 this morning. Her smile could have cut steel. So tell me, Rod, what exactly do you want? This was the moment I'd been preparing for since I'd walked out of that building with security at my elbows. I want to build the company Coastal Defense should have been, American-owned, veteran-operated, focused on protecting our coastlines instead of selling access to whoever writes the biggest check. You want control? I want purpose. NavGuard can be more than just profitable. It can be the shield that stands between American families and the people who want to hurt them, but only if it's developed correctly, ethically, with people who understand what's really at stake. Catherine leaned forward, her business instincts fully engaged. Atlantic Strategic is prepared to invest $40 million in acquiring NavGuard technology. That offer obviously can't go to Coastal Defense now, but the technology still exists and we still want access to it. She slid another document across the table. The signing bonus number made me pause and read it twice. $250,000. That's just the signing bonus, Catherine said casually. Your salary as chief maritime architect would be separate, plus comprehensive medical coverage for your entire family. We take care of our people, Rod. I thought about Maria, about the treatments that insurance barely covered, about our kids' futures in a world where our ports were increasingly vulnerable to threats from cartels and foreign adversaries. I have conditions. I wouldn't respect you if you didn't. First, I bring my team. Kelly Rodriguez, Brad Thompson, the people who actually built NavGuard with me. They deserve to see their work succeed under proper leadership. Done. Second, NavGuard's security protocols are non-negotiable. No backdoors for anyone, including government agencies. Unless they follow proper legal channels, we protect everyone equally or we protect no one at all. Agreed. Third, when we announce Atlantic Maritime Defense, I want the entire defense community to know exactly who built this technology and who tried to steal it from American engineers. Catherine laughed out loud. Rod, I like your style. Yes, we can definitely arrange that kind of public launch. We spent the next 2 hours working through details with Catherine's legal team joining us via video conference by 5 p.m. The framework was complete. Atlantic Maritime Defense would be incorporated by morning. The patents would transfer smoothly from Martinez Maritime Solutions, and Bobby Castellano would wake up tomorrow to discover his company was worth about as much as a used fishing boat with engine problems. Walking out of Atlantic's offices into the late afternoon sun, I felt lighter than I had in years. This morning, I'd been fired in disgrace, escorted out by security like some kind of corporate criminal. This afternoon, I was about to become chief maritime architect of a defense company with unlimited resources and a mission I could actually believe in. My phone buzzed with a text from Maria, saw the news online. The kids called me worried. Are we going to be okay financially? I smiled as I typed back. We're going to be better than okay, mi amor. Your husband just reminded some people why they shouldn't mess with Coast Guard veterans who know how to build things right. That's wonderful. Carlos said he's proud of you. Sophia called from nursing school and said her professors were talking about it in class. Even my mother said you did good, which is a first. That made me laugh out loud. Maria's mother had never thought much of my career choices, but maybe standing up for principles was something even she could respect. The news broke at 6:30 p.m., spreading through defense industry circles like wildfire. Coastal Defense loses core technology in employment dispute. Coast Guard contract terminated after system failure. Former serviceman controls $40 million maritime platform. I was home grilling fresh-caught grouper for Maria and me, our usual Tuesday night routine when Bobby's desperate phone call came through. "Rod, this is Bobby. We need to talk." "Now, nothing to discuss, Bobby. You made your choice this morning when you decided to fire the guy who built everything you needed to stay in business. The board is willing to discuss terms, reinstatement, equity stake, complete autonomy over technical decisions, whatever you want." I flipped the fish and listened to it sizzle on the grill. "I already have what I want, Bobby. You've destroyed everything we built over the past 4 years." "No, Bobby. You destroyed it yourself the moment you chose social media consultants over experienced engineers and foreign investors over American security interests. I just refuse to go down with your sinking ship." "This isn't over, Martinez." "Yeah, it is. Atlantic Maritime Defense launches Monday morning. Maybe Blake can livestream you trying to explain to your board how you lost a $40 million contract because you fired the only guy who actually understood the technology." I hung up and immediately blocked the number. There would be more desperate calls from board members, investors, maybe even some government officials. But I was done negotiating with people who treated national security like a commodity to be traded for profit. Maria came out to the deck, moving carefully but smiling wider than I'd seen in months. The stress lines around her eyes had softened for the first time since her diagnosis. "You seem different tonight," she said, settling into her favorite chair, more relaxed. Like a weight's been lifted. I looked at my wife of 23 years, the woman who'd stood by me through Coast Guard deployments, career changes, and medical bills that would have crushed most families. She was right. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't worried about next month's medication costs, or whether we'd have to refinance the house again. "I am different, Maria. This morning, I worked for someone who didn't value what I brought to the table, who was willing to compromise everything I'd built for short-term financial gains. Tonight, I work for myself, building something that actually matters for our kids' generation. Is that good for us? Yeah, mi amor, that's very good for our family. You can get that new treatment Dr. Ramirez recommended. Carlos doesn't have to worry about student loans next semester. Sophia can focus on her nursing degree. Instead of working 2 part-time jobs, she reached over and took my hand, her grip stronger than it had been in months. I'm proud of you, Rod. Standing up to them couldn't have been easy, knowing what was at stake for us. The next morning, I stood in the conference room of Atlantic Maritime Defense's temporary headquarters, looking out at a crowd of defense reporters, industry analysts, and government officials. Kelly Rodriguez and Brad Thompson were setting up our demonstration equipment, their excitement obvious after years of working under Bobby's mismanagement. At exactly 10:30 a.m., the same time Bobby's demo had collapsed 24 hours earlier, I signed the final incorporation documents that made Atlantic Maritime Defense official. "Ladies and gentlemen," Catherine Brooks announced to the assembled crowd, "Atlantic Maritime Defense represents a new standard in American coastal protection, built by veterans, owned by Americans, dedicated to protecting the critical waterways that keep our country safe and secure." The questions came fast and direct, exactly what I'd expected from experienced defense reporters. "Mr. Martinez, how do you respond to accusations from Coastal Defense that you sabotaged their system? I spent 4 years building NavGuard to protect American ports from drug runners, human traffickers, and foreign threats. The only sabotage was Bobby Castellano's decision to treat maritime security like a social media opportunity. What about your former colleagues still at Coastal Defense?" I gestured toward Kelly and Brad. "The engineers who actually built NavGuard are right here with me. As for those who remain at Coastal Defense, they're welcome to apply for positions. We believe in taking care of people who do the real work." What's next for Atlantic Maritime Defense? We're expanding NavGuard's capabilities to cover the entire Gulf Coast by year-end. Every major port from Texas to Florida will have comprehensive tracking and threat detection. American waters protected by Americans who understand what's really at stake. As the press conference wrapped up, Carlos texted me from college. "Dad, you're all over the maritime industry websites. My Coast Guard ROTC instructor showed our whole class the press conference. He said, 'You're a legend.'" I smiled and typed back, "Just remember, son, sometimes standing up for what's right means taking risks. But if you plan carefully, keep your principles, and remember what really matters, it usually works out better than you imagined." Got it. Can we celebrate when I'm home for spring break, somewhere nice this time? Absolutely. You picked the place. We can finally afford it. Looking out at the harbor, I could see container ships and Coast Guard cutters moving along channels that NavGuard was designed to protect. By now, Bobby was probably in his fifth emergency board meeting this week, trying to explain to increasingly furious investors how he'd managed to lose everything in less than 24 hours. But this was never really about revenge, even though watching Bobby's arrogance come back to bite him felt pretty satisfying. It was about understanding that in America, innovation belongs to the people who create it. Loyalty has to be earned through respect, not demanded through authority. And some things like protecting our coastlines are more important than quarterly profit margins. Bobby thought he could replace experience with marketing, dedication with nepotism, and American engineering with whoever worked cheapest. He learned the hard way that when you try to screw over someone who spent 18 years protecting American waters, you better make sure they don't hold all the keys to everything you need to survive. They fired me at 8:15 a.m. for refusing to compromise maritime security. By 10:30 a.m. the next day, I owned the very technology their entire company was built on. And that evening, for the first time in 3 years, Maria and I sat on our deck watching the sunset without worrying about tomorrow's bills. Because sometimes in America, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something better and showing everyone what real leadership looks like. And when you've spent half your life defending something bigger than yourself, you learn that the sweetest victory isn't crushing your enemies. It's protecting the people who matter most.